One.
Okay, lovely. So good evening and welcome to all the candidates who are here tonight. Thank you, especially because obviously last week we had to reschedule, so it's amazing that you could all meet tonight as well. So I'm Tom, I'm the founder of Chesterfield Community Network, which is a volunteer scheme to help primarily to help the COVID situation last year, but we are now an ongoing group. I've been approached by the Chesterfield Climate Alliance to ask if I'd chair this this hustings in a view that, you know, I'm non-partisan, I don't support any particular party, and, you know, I'm very sort of biased in that respect. So just a few sort of rules what we've got here really. So the webinar will be recorded and uploaded on Chesterfield Climate Alliance website. Any questions submitted from people viewing tonight can be put into the comment box, and they will be submitted separately to all the candidates who then can, if they wish, reply in writing, which again will be uploaded to the website. So a little bit for the candidates really. So please stick to your time. Greg, I think he's shown you the signs to tell you that there's 1 minute remaining, and there's also another sign to tell you that your time is up. Without sounding harsh, if your time is up, you'll be muted. So sorry for that, but you know, we need to stick to schedule. And that's about that really. So I think we need to just go into the biographies now and just give a bit about each of the candidates. So I'll just update you first with John Boult. John was born in Chesterfield. He has lived in the Ashgate area for 45 years. He is a retired chartered surveyor and worked for Bradford and Bingley Building Society as a valuer in Derbyshire, Nottinghamshire and South Yorkshire for 25 years. He was elected as a Conservative county councillor for Walton and West ward in Chesterfield in 2017 and is standing again for the same ward. He is a councillor and has been appointed a partner governor of Chesterfield Royal Hospital and Derbyshire and director of Derbyshire Law Centre. We have Darren Yates. Darren has lived in Hasland all his life, works as a civil servant in Sheffield. Darren is a coordinator of Derbyshire Green Party and is standing as a Green Party candidate for the division of Bird Home. Aside from involvement with the Green Party, Darren also has been a member of Chesterfield Borough Council's Climate Change Working Group and was originally involved in Plastic Free Chesterfield. We have Jean Innes. Jean lives in New Whittington and has lived in Chesterfield since their marriage almost 45 years ago. She worked for the cooperative in administration and later at Tesco in the same role. She has been a Labour County Councillor for almost 8 years in the St Mary's ward of Chesterfield, where she is restanding again. Jean is also a cabinet member of Chesterfield Borough Council. We have Ed Fordham. Ed moved to Chesterfield in 2015 with his husband and runs a market stall in the town, Brockwell Books of Chesterfield. Ed has an allotment. He is one of the walkers of his husky Sparky, and he has co-wrote and published the Chesterfield letters of Edward Carpenter. In 2019, Ed became an elected Liberal Democrats Borough Councillor for the Brockwell ward in Chesterfield and is now standing in the County Council election for the Lounsey Green and Newbold ward. We have Paul Mann. Paul grew up in Hollingwood. At 16, he joined the Royal Navy and served in the Falklands War in 1982. Once returning home, he worked at Staveley Works, and from 2002 to 2011, he was an elected councillor for Staveley before once again becoming councillor in 2019 as part of the Community Independence. Paul is now the leader of Staveley Town Council and is standing in Staveley ward in the election again. He is the governor of Netherthorpe School and is the creator of Staveley Allotments and Gardens. So that's a little biography on the candidates. So we'll go into the introductory remarks now. So each candidate get 3 minutes each really. So the question really is, why is taking action on the environment and nature important? And have you had any carbon literacy training or other training in climate issues? And what difference has it made to your own carbon footprint? So with that question, I'd like to ask that to John Boult first, please.
Thank you, Tom. I have always had a love of the countryside and all that it has to offer. Those of you who are long-standing members of Chesterfield U3A will know that I have been a keen member of two of the U3A walking groups, the Wednesday group for long walks and the Thursday group for medium length walks. I have participated in many of the walks, mainly in the countryside around Chesterfield and in the Peak District. For a long time, I have been a member of the North East Derbyshire Field Club, having attended numerous lectures plus organised walks in the summer. In 2017, I moved from Ashgate to a bungalow closer to the town centre. Now our local shop is within 5 minutes walk, as is our dentist. It takes 10 minutes to walk to our doctor's surgery, and I can be in the town centre within 15 minutes on foot. In fact, I do far less journeys by car than I used to. I have not had carbon literacy training, nor other training in climate issues. However, I have watched a large number of TV programs dealing with these issues. In April 2018, I was appointed Vice Chair of DCC Scrutiny Committee Resources. Shortly after, a working group was set up to evolve policies addressing climate change. Subsequently, the Derbyshire Climate and Carbon Reduction Manifold was published in May 2019. What have I achieved personally and with the Conservative group? The rollout of street light conversions from sodium to LED bulbs has continued apace throughout the county, and this can be measured in tens of thousands of units. This programme brings with it the benefit of reduced electricity usage and greatly reduced running costs. A start has been made on converting the Derbyshire County Council vehicle fleet to electrically powered vehicles, and this included, around a year ago, the purchase of 3 electric vehicle type cars for the use of council officials. Thirdly, 140 EV charging points have been installed throughout Derbyshire and also in DCC car parks in order to encourage council staff to purchase electric vehicles for their own use. And that's the end of my introductions.
Lovely. I think that's fitted perfectly into the 3 minutes. So if anybody would like me to repeat the question, you're more than welcome to just ask me. But I'll now ask the question with Jean Innes, please.
Right, thank you for the inviting me to this. I'm very pleased to be here because climate change is something that years ago we didn't think about. We just automatically did the recycling and the walking and the looking after the fields and the gardening, and we just took it for granted. And I think I always have done. I think COVID has actually brought home to us how much more wonderful our areas look during COVID. I know we can't not travel to work ever again, but I do think that has emphasised that we do need to be careful what we do with the carbon footprint, and we can have a better world to live in if we don't. And it is really, really important that we do not destroy this country for our future generations. Let them have the same opportunities as we've had. I've had very little training. What training I have had has come from Chesterfield Borough. I can't think we've had any training whatsoever at DCC. I can't say I've learnt a lot because I think I already knew it. As regards, we shouldn't be wasting energy. But I think one thing I do know is, however much we try and get people to think green, we've got to make it affordable. Not everybody can afford to go and buy an electric car, unfortunately. It doesn't matter how many electric charge points we have. We need to make the vehicles within the reach of ordinary people, not just affluent. And I think that's what I've got to say on it. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Okay, lovely. And the same question, please, to Paul Mann.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thanks for the chance and thanks for inviting me. I've not had any training at all, really, or on literacy, I think, but I work on experience and what I've seen. I mean, the Royal Navy, as you mentioned, Chair, I've been fortunate with my travels to see things like, when I say penguins, not in zoos, but actually in Antarctica, and how clear waters are down there, how unspoiled areas like that are so pure and so clear, same with Canada and places like that. So it's more on what I've seen, it's more my personal experiences where I've really took note. And even now, I think being from State to Staveley areas, some of the other candidates know, many years ago, from where I sit now, I would see straight in front of me and to my left would be nothing but a steel plant. To my left and round towards Duckmanton would be nothing but coal mines, slag heaps, etc. And I think it's because they've all gone and nature's took over. I've seen the transformation. I've seen what nature can do. And in surveys that you've had in the past with various things happening in Staveley, like with the canal, etc., people are now saying, I think because it's because of COVID, how important open spaces are to them, how walking is important, how getting out there and not seeing the tips, etc., not seeing the coal mines, which are a thing of the past. They have gone, they've done, it's had its day, and we need to move forward, but at the same time, we need to get things sorted out as well to replace them. Only today, the planning committee at Chesterfield Borough had just passed a solar farm in my own ward of Ingersoll. So in whole, even though I've not had the training, it's my own life experience that I draw on to say that we must start planning to save the planet. We're not the owners, we're its guardians. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And the same question, please, to Ed Fordham.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks for the question. There's several things, really. I served on the climate change working group at the Town Hall, Borough Council, and they are looking to roll out carbon literacy training. And I've asked that it not only be rolled out to all councillors on the Borough Council, but also to all parish councillors in Staveley and Brimington. I don't think it's sufficient just for the people who think they're making decisions to be informed. On a personal note, when I was elected as a Borough Councillor, I registered at Future Learn, and I've done a series of modules on understanding climate change, on emissions impact, concepts in sustainable change and action, and climate change, the science and governance. So I did that on a personal level because I wanted to be more informed of the facts. I don't drive myself, so actually the principal creator of carbon emissions, vehicles in our homes, I'm sort of not guilty on that charge, but I'm very aware that it's houses and buildings and heat and energy that drive climate change. But there's so many things that the councils, both at a borough and at a county level, could do. Electric charging needs to be rolled out across the town on council estates and housing areas, from light lamp posts, just needs to become the absolute norm. The financial purchasing power of both councils, we need to stop investing in fossil fuels. It's bonkers that still occurs at all. The financial power of DCC and DCC with regards to its own fleet. Recently, Chesterfield Borough Council converted its fleet, about 140 vehicles, only 5 were electric, and it's just not good enough. Green travel routes, school air pollution, there's so many areas, and I think there's a risk with this topic that we sort of say, oh, it's about the climate change, it's about the environment, it's about nature. Actually, it's about carbon emissions, and we need to be ruthless about tackling carbon emissions and bearing down on that, both in terms of ourselves as opinion formers, ourselves as financial providers and leaders of purchasing and procurement, but also with the groups that we work with. And I think the Borough Council and the County Council can do much more as leaders and advocates of change. We should be getting supermarkets around the table and discussing food miles, air miles, and just cutting down on all of the emissions that lead to a poor climate and puts us at peril. The only thing I want to say finally is that both Derbyshire and Chesterfield have declared a climate emergency. If the speed at which they are working is emergency speed, then I'm scared for us all. And the truth is, I think we're walking towards the climate emergency when in fact we should be acting much quicker, much more visibly, and yes, more immediately. I'll leave it there, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. And then finally, please, Darren Yates.
Okay, thank you, and hello to everybody, and thanks for inviting me, including me in the Hustings, providing me the opportunity to put over the vision the Green Party has for UK and Derbyshire. I think like many of the other panel, I haven't had any formal sort of carbon trading as such. It's just sort of my involvement in various things, and certainly since joining the Green Party, I've become a lot more aware of the issues, etc., and tried to mitigate my own carbon footprint. I have solar panels, for example, on my roof, etc. But I think the events of the previous 12 months have taken up much of our thoughts and actions of the government and all local authorities. But I think it's a fact remains that one of the biggest issues facing the environment and nature is that is the biggest threat we face today. And indeed, it's highly probable that the pandemic itself came about as a result of what we're doing to destroy natural habitats. So it's of vital importance we take action now if we are to pass on a sustainable future to the generations to come. We need to start making the right decisions now, because it's not yet too late. There's still time, if not a lot, to turn things around. Indeed, by making the right choices now, we can build a fairer, greener society that provides for us all, not just the few at the top, as is all too often the case at the moment. The Green Party has detailed plans to move to a more sustainable future. For example, on transport, we want to move away from our reliance on cars and instead invest in more public transport and active travel, such as walking and cycling. We support localisation of the economy, food and farming, by supporting local food production that respects animal welfare, nature and the countryside, which again will revitalise rural economies. We want to stop the destruction of wildlife habitats and go further to rewild some areas. While we believe a lot of the responsibility for change rests with government and business, we also want to support the individuals to do what they can to reduce, reuse or recycle more and lower their individual carbon budgets. Hopefully we can discuss more of those things later on. But essentially electing Green councillors to Derbyshire County Council is a positive choice, and one which in other areas has proven to lead to positive actions on the environment and nature, has been demonstrated locally in Derbyshire Dales, High Peak and the Valley. We'd now like the opportunity to take that positive action to the County Council and build a greener future for Derbyshire. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you. So that's your introductory remarks. So now we'll go into the 5 questions that I believe have been submitted by members of the public to the Climate Alliance. So with that in mind, we've got question 1, which is 14 out of 24 UK biodiversity indicators are in decline. 17 out of 20 United Nations biodiversity targets are not met in the UK. What would candidates do to increase biodiversity in Derbyshire? And I will aim that first, please, to Jean Innes.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Tell me if this is the wrong answer to the question, but what the Labour Party have said they will do if they get in power in DCC, we're going to plant 1 million trees to help offset the carbon emissions and improve air quality across Derbyshire. We'll promote Derbyshire as a green investment, a hub for green investment and skills, creating jobs and prosperity, as well as addressing climate issues. We'll invest in infrastructure to support zero carbon public transport, helping to reduce road traffic whilst reducing harmful emissions. Excuse me. I will also explore opportunities to generate and use zero carbon energy across the county council estate, and again, incentives for sustainable public transport used to reduce dependency on car usage.
Okay, lovely. And the same question, please, to Ed Fordham.
I think it's very easy for us all to say we will do more. I think the part of it is that we need to look at what we've been doing as well. There are tiny things that the council can do, such as in putting in holes in walls so that hedgehogs can get through. So there's hedgehog corridors, protecting badger sets where they exist on allotment associated. There's all sorts of small measures. We can stop cutting the side of roadsides in order to let sort of wildflowers bloom. We can do more planting. But I think the real test is that we are advocates of that, so that enable the community to do more. The council can only do so much, and I just worry. I hear Jean say that the Labour group are committed, I think, to 1 million trees, I think she said. When I proposed that there should be a tree for every resident of Chesterfield planted every 4 years, it was cut down to 1,000 a year. So suddenly it's 1 million for Derbyshire, and I can't deny I'm a little bit unconvinced. I think there's a lot to be done. We have in Chesterfield, if you take that as example, we've got Homebrook Valley Park and Poolsbrook Country Park. We've also got vast acreage of Devonshire land. We should be at the cutting edge of biodiversity, biodiversity protection and biodiversity enhancement. And the truth is, we're not. The truth is we are behind, even though we have the advantage of 2 country parks and a large Devonshire estate. If that doesn't put us in a list of shame, then I don't really know what is. We can do much, much more, but it involves empowering the community, giving councillors the ability to make decisions themselves at a local level, working with town councils and parish councils. There's so much more to be done. Biodiversity has to be a priority, and so far it hasn't been.
Okay, lovely, thank you. And the same question, please, to John Bolton.
Thank you, Tom. I'm very pleased to announce that the Conservative group at Matlock has produced a climate change and carbon reduction manifesto. There are a lot of things we want to achieve, and the things that we will do is reaffirm the commitments made in our 2019 climate change and carbon reduction manifesto to be net zero as an authority by 2032 or sooner. We're to develop a 100 million capital scheme to improve Derbyshire's environment, investing in the green economy, promoting cleaner air schemes in our towns, and investing in cycling and walking greenways in the county. Similar to the Labour group, we will strive to facilitate the planting of up to 1 million trees in Derbyshire by 2030 by providing planting grant schemes. In my own division, I intend to fund a tree planting scheme in Somersall Park, with implementing 20 miles per hour zone trials in 2 towns in Derbyshire to promote clean air and cycling, making them green towns. We will continue to invest in electric vehicles, vehicle charging point infrastructure in Derbyshire with partners in the public and private sector to deliver an ambitious target of 1,000 EV charging points by the end of 2025. We'll work with partners in the public and private sectors to deliver 2 hydrogen fuel stations in Derbyshire and 30 hydrogen-powered buses and refuse collection vehicles by 2025. We'll use our abundant natural capital, such as our extensive countryside, moors and woodlands, to help deliver carbon reduction measures and invest in Derbyshire. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. And then Paul Mann, please.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, we are, as a small group, are a small group. If I can bring this down to grassroots, really, if I can take my Borough Council hat off and put my Stay with Town Council hat on, it'll come to cost. But at Stay with Town Council, we've already done that and looked at that, and we are planting trees, and we've done that by talking to companies. Small things, it is little, but little things get bigger, hence the acorn, the mighty oak. We spoke to companies in Staveley who are planting so many trees for so many skips of waste, etc., but they take landfill, etc., things like that. So the companies are bearing the cost and the responsibility. The companies in Staveley. The problem we have, believe it or not, is not convincing the companies and the firms in Staveley to do this. It's convincing the local borough council to find us the land to do it, because they keep saying, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't plant them here. So I think the will at the grassroots is there. I think there's a way of doing it in a bigger scale, but it seems to be, the problem seems to be not the will to plant more trees, for example, and look at it. It's the will of the bigger councils. And I hope if I get on county council, even though I'm a small voice, to try and badger them enough to say, look, let the small things start and the big things will come, and stop holding us back. Because at the moment, certain bigger authorities are holding back the smaller authorities for doing green projects. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. And Darren Yates, please.
Thank you. Well, first thing I'd point out, the increasing biodiversity doesn't start and end with just planting more trees. There's a lot more to it than that. I'm a keen hiker out in the Peak District. I was out over Castleton, over towards Hope on Saturday. And while the scenery over there is spectacular, in a lot of ways it's a desert in terms of its biodiversity, in terms of the nature of all that. What we're doing in a lot of the Peak District in terms of our natural peat bogs, which are one of the biggest sources of carbon sink that we've got in the country, that would actually help far more than planting trees. You know, I think as a council, we've got to do a lot more in terms of working with the Peak National Park, with the landowners over there. Let's stop them burning the peat bogs for the grouse, allow more trees, etc. there to grow. More locally, again, yes, it's supporting local initiatives where, you know, should we be regularly cutting grass verges, let them go more wild like they are doing in some authorities again. You know, that's something we've recommended on the Chesterfield Borough Council in the Climate Change Working Group, which only the other week they were around here cutting the grass again with their diesel mowers, etc. So that's obviously not something they're taking up even locally in Chesterfield when it's been recommended to us. So there's a lot the council and the county council can do as a facilitator for local areas to get more groups involved and to increase diversity. But we've got to look wider than just it's planting a few trees, a few extra trees, as important as that is. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's one thing that I've picked up from you know, all the answers from you guys now is, you know, a lot of it has been covered with regards to planting trees, but you know, like you said, there's a lot more to it. And it'd be interesting to know, you know, the views of the parties as to how they take that forward. So the next question, in light of central government abandonment of its failed Green Deal scheme, what might be done locally to incentivise household scheme? Pardon?
It's the Green Deal scheme, yeah?
Yes. Yeah. In the light of the central government's abandonment of its failed Green Deal scheme, what might be done locally to incentivise households and businesses to conserve energy and become more energy efficient? And what would you do to reduce emissions from local industry? Ed Fordham, please.
The Green Deal scheme was really important. If you walk around some of the housing estates in Chesterfield, you'll see vast numbers with solar panels on. And in fact, Darren mentioned that he himself's got solar panels on his own house. Those didn't just happen because the local authority decided to. It's because national government, working with solar panel providers, enabled a grant to local government, and that enables it to happen. The truth is that local government doesn't have vast amounts of money. It has sort of what it calls environmental soft power. One of the units in Chesterfield where small startup businesses work, it specialises in environmental measures. And it was poor, really, that in the climate change working group, we didn't involve those businesses in that discussion. There's an entire block of businesses, I think it's 32 of them, who specialise in environmental measures. We need to get business around the table. And I don't think Destination Chesterfield, as good as that is at promoting Chesterfield, I don't think it's the answer to working with business in its broadest sense. What we tend to think is a few shops and shopkeepers. And in fact, we need to go to the industrial estates all the way around Chesterfield, Staveley, Brewington. There is no shortage of small to medium-sized enterprises. We need to sit down and work with them. That is a mixture of both developing science and technology, but also harnessing the local provision of materials. One of the things my colleague Tom Snowden has brought up is whether we should be looking at fusion power in order to sort of cut out, you know, to fulfil the dream, really, of more localized energy provision that isn't nuclear. There's so much more we can do, and at the moment those debates with businesses, those relationships don't exist in strong enough terms. They certainly don't exist at a localised level at parish and town council. They certainly don't exist at the borough level. It's possible the county council has the flex to do it, but while the government is closing down Green Deal schemes, it makes it very, very hard to do it. And the truth is, the government closed down the scheme. The county council is run by the Conservatives. John is here defending their record, but closing down the Green Deal scheme strikes me as one of the most remiss and backward steps this government has done for many, many years.
Okay, great, thank you. So, John.
Yes, so I'd like to answer that point. We do have a cabinet member on the county council, Councillor Tony Kent, who's specifically tasked to liaise with businesses in Derbyshire to encourage carbon saving schemes. One of our ideas is to look at the Derbyshire County Council estate, because we do have warehouses, we do have quite a number of buildings where solar panels could be installed instead of them being erected in the countryside, which doesn't really meet everyone's satisfaction. It's a bit of an eyesore, but there are all those roofs that could be fitted out with solar panels. So that's one intention. Also, localized wind turbines. That's another thing that could be encouraged across the county. Just a point that was mentioned earlier on about the roadside verges. Cutting of roadside verges should be limited to road junctions, you know, where country lane leads out onto a main road. Then of course the verges should be cut for safety reasons. But there's little point in doing the rest of it. Thank you.
Okay, lovely. And Darren Yates, please.
Yeah, I mean, like Ed said, yeah, I've got my solar panels on the roof. It was through the feed-in tariff scheme as an encouragement to do it. I couldn't have afforded to do it any other way. So, yeah, it's, well, in the year we were hosting COP26 to suddenly just abandon the Green Deal scheme is just, well, it sort of makes you wonder, really. I think as a council, I think first thing we want to do is lead by example. So everything the council does has got to have at its heart the reduction in energy wastage in terms of carbon reduction at every level. Again, as working by example, working with the other or local authorities and building that network together to make sure that that happens. And again, as an advocate for small business, you know, the Green Party is a big advocate of small businesses and sort of working in the localities. And the County Council has a large buying power within small businesses, and it should use that to, when it's doing and buying stuff from small business, to work with them to improve their carbon efficiency, to reduce their emissions, etc. So there's a lot that the council can do. What doesn't necessarily mean they're going to end up having to spend more money, but as a facilitator, leading by example and working with small businesses particularly. Thank you.
Lovely. And Jean Innes, please.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Fordham mentioned that the councils don't have much money. It's not that they don't have much money, it's that they don't have much power. Whatever we try to do, it's the only people who can change the rules and change the laws are the government. And Derbyshire County Council should have been lobbying government in the 4 years they've been in, saying we want clean air, we want to invest in clean energy, we want to have an atmosphere. For instance, in my division, there's a large Tesco, and I walk past an aisle that is completely filled with water bottles wrapped in plastic and then wrapped in plastic again. And I've actually approached the manager and said, why do we have to have so much plastic? Can't we just have single bottles? It may seem very little, but hey, every little helps. But I cannot do it, and that manager cannot do it. It's got to come from government. Stop using plastic wastefully, for instance. I think, to be honest, whatever party we're in, this is an issue for us all. This is a priority for us all. And if it isn't, then it should be. It shouldn't be an afterthought for government or for councils. It should be very high on the agenda. And if we get in at Derbyshire, it will be high on our agenda, as it is at Chesterfield Borough Council already. We'd support the 20's Plenty, which would obviously cut carbon emissions. We'd work with operators to use green fuel and replace their old buses, many of which are running around Chesterfield. And we need to get the government support for flood prevention and damage. And we'd also expand the clean air, especially around schools in Derbyshire.
Okay, lovely, thank you. So that will take us on to question 3. So the Committee on Climate Change has shown that we need to use our cars less and to meet our carbon targets. What are your plans to improve public transport and encouraging people to use cars less? So, for example, would you make buses free? Would you bring buses into public ownership? Would you link buses and trains? And how would you improve the cycling infrastructure? What other measures would you take? And do you think it's better to spend money improving public transport and reducing unnecessary journeys rather than building new roads? John Bolton, please.
Thank you, Tom. Yes, with regard to transport, the Derbyshire County Council is intent on developing with the government and other organisations like the Peak District National Park innovative, sustainable transport systems to reduce traffic within the national park and our countryside. And we do have a scheme in Derbyshire. Instead of some of the more remote villages having a regular bus service, we have this system called Dial a Bus, whereby people in the villages can phone a number and arrange for a minibus to come and pick them up and return them later on. So that's much more targeted than the old system and rather costly system of having regular bus services. As I said earlier on, we are intent on implementing 20-mile-an-hour zone trials in 2 towns in Derbyshire, and I would personally hope to see that expanded to other areas within our term of office. The Derbyshire County Council will explore ways to use our abundant rivers in the new green industrial revolution to generate power for our communities and industries. Obviously rivers like River Derwent and River Dove and River Manifold. And we also intend to work with the government and the Peak District National Park Authority in the restoration of our peat moors, which the peat moors offer a very big carbon storage facility, let's say. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. And Darren Yates, please.
Okay, thank you. Well, I mean, I think the first thing we do is try, I think as the council is trying to lobby to stop the government's £27 billion road building programme and airport expansion. I think is vital. I think that it should be more focused on local public transport. I think even locally within Derbyshire, I think one of the last magazines we got round from the county council was trumpeting the £40 million they're looking at spending on transport. Vast majority of it is allocated to road use. Now I know some has to go on repairing roads, fixing roads, making sure potholes, etc. are fixed, but the actual amount of it was allocated on sustainable travel options was minuscule in terms of public transport, cycling, etc. So I think it'd have to be a rethink of if is that £40 million there available for transport, how is that spent, refocus that more on sustainable travel options, more on promoting local bus usage, cycling, walking. Again, while it's not necessarily county council, it's working with local councils in terms of where are we siting new developments, that then have to encourage people to actually travel into the centres, should they not be actually looking at more in that sense. Again, accessibility and so access regardless of age, wealth, disability, making sure transport is available for all and has a minimum impact on the environment. I think we've got to be clever. I mean, just this evening I was coming home, and Derby Road through Chesterfield is just, I mean, this was 3:30. It was essentially a car park. To drive up down there, you look between here and Clay Cross, you've just got development after development after development, traffic coming then into Chesterfield. We've got to look better at that. Can we then not adapt and use the railway line that runs through that as well? Have more stations, maybe at Hepsall Lane, near Clay Cross, etc., to alleviate some of that. So I think we've got to think more creatively in terms of our travel options. Thank you.
Okay, lovely. And the same question to Paul Mann, please.
Thank you, Chair. Basically, 20 is plenty. Good idea, never work unless you enforce it. You've got it in Sheffield, don't enforce. Unless you've got a police officer stood at every street corner, it will not happen. So let's face a bit of reality on that. It is a good idea and I would support it. Bus companies, you'll never get a reliable, cheap bus company while they're in private hands. They need to come back under council control and they need to be on time, need to serve communities. But that's going to boil down to cash yet again. For example, in Staveley alone, I know one village was left out because from Staveley to Chesterfield, there could be 30 or 40 people on it. From Poulsbrook to Chesterfield, there was hardly anybody, so it was dropped off. It's as simple as that. And I'll quote Stagecoach, in this case, as it were, exact words, at a forum, you have a private company trying to provide a public service. It will not happen. They're out to make the money. They've got to make the money. They've got to keep the share owners happy. So that until you get round them hurdles, you will not get 20 mile an hour in the States, which I would back 100%, and you will not get a reliable public transport service. I am glad to hear John West said one thing that I can just touch on it, Chair, slightly, about powering businesses with water, hydro type things. I sit on the planning committee at Chesterfield, and there's 2,000 houses to be in Staveley, built in Staveley. I've heard him say must have parking spaces, must have 2 parking spaces, but I've not one person he'd say, and the minutes are here from this last meeting I had today, doesn't say must have solar panels on the roofs. Or DCC, who own Markham Vale in my ward, are extending. There's 2 rivers go round it, the Doley and the Rother. I've not seen one water wheel on there like they go in Yorkshire, where they've converted the old water mills into power. It's all turbine. Yeah, the big turbines are nice, but hydro and little water wheels are a lot better and more and better for wildlife as well. So that's a couple of issues. But while you've got private ownership of a bus company, you will not get a reliable, good service that people will use. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. And Jean Innes, please.
Thank you, Chair. Well, Man's told us what we can't do. Let me try and decide what we can do. And obviously the Tory administration definitely don't think we should improve the roads. Obviously they must be going down the other route. I think we've got to work with the bus operators to, and I know I've repeated myself, but I do think it's important to get a good bus service. People will not abandon their cars if they cannot get a decent bus. We've got to get rid of the old buses that are throwing carbon out all the time. We've got to encourage them to go with green fuel, even if it means giving them grants. That's fine, again, but that's down to government. We've learned in the past year that people can work from home in some cases. I know in a lot of cases they can't, but that would help. But not if they're sat at home working and ordering things online, because that's just going to put the carbon footprint up again. So I'd like people to work from home if they can, but I'd also like them to shop local. People are travelling 30, 40 miles to go to a shopping centre. We don't need them. We've got plenty of shops locally. There's so much we can do if we sit down and think about it and talk to one another. As I said, we're all of one mind, hopefully. I can't imagine anybody would be here tonight if they weren't concerned about climate change. And we can do as much locally as we can, as the government, but the government needs to make the rules and the grants. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Ed Fordham, please.
Thanks, Chair. There was a motion for debate upon buses in my name at Chesterfield Borough Council in February. We ran out of time on that meeting. It's due to come back to the meeting next week. And the Labour administration are telling me I'm not allowed to debate that because I'm a candidate for the county council and therefore it would be breaking the rules of elections and PERDA. So I was due to lead a debate on this at the Borough Council. It looks like that will now be deferred until July. Such is the nature of the climate emergency. I got the bus the other day from Chesterfield to Home Hall, number 39, the day before the restrictions have been sort of widely lifted, and it was fairly empty. There were 3 of us, including the driver, going out of Chesterfield. I got it 2 days later, and there were 26 of us. The truth is that there is a large number of people who are willing and want to use buses, but the government, in the guidance on COVID and the pandemic, through the bus companies under under the rails, as it were. We've got a huge amount of work now to rebuild confidence in public transport. Here, that's buses, but also trains. And Darren mentioned that reopening some railway stations. The problem is we tend to put the railway station conversation after the houses are built rather than in front of it. And that's the problem. The truth is there should be a means of getting Brimington, Staveley, etc. They should all have local railway stations. We shouldn't be post-installing metro tram systems like they had to do in Manchester and Nottingham. We should be doing it as the houses are being built and not afterwards as a bit of a panic measure. Because by that time, people are settled into their cars, they're enjoying their car park, their carport, and they're driving to their supermarkets. Jean said we shouldn't be driving sort of 20, 30 miles to go shopping. She should read her own economic development plans for Chesterfield, where we overtly state we are looking to attract people from over an hour's drive away to come and shop in Chesterfield. We are encouraging people to drive to Chesterfield to shop. I get the dilemma, I understand the dichotomy, but you can't then come on a climate change panel and say people shouldn't drive to shops, when in fact your own economic development plans are pushing for that. On cyclists, there's so much more we can do to encourage off-route cyclists. Certain routes are one-way encouragement, certain routes aren't, but we're tending to build cyclists into the plan again afterwards, like the railway lines. The truth is that the buses aren't set up to carry bikes, and they should be. They are in other parts of the country, and we're behind the curve here in Derbyshire, and we need to get ahead of that, working with South Yorkshire as well as Derbyshire bus companies. The other bit is I think I understood John Boult just saying that he thought buses and cyclists were important. And yeah, looking at his leaflet here on screen, improving our roads is in his top 3 priorities. I don't see his environment measures for buses and cyclists in there. So the truth is we're all here giving platitudes and good words. But actually, John, your administration at County Hall have not done the work necessary to invest in buses and cyclists. And on your own literature, you're encouraging road use.
Okay, lovely, thank you. So that takes us on to question 4. So waste and plastic pollution are a big problem, especially on our highways, which are under county council highways control. If elected, what actions would you take to address single-use plastic, fly tipping and litter in our area? Darren Yates, please.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, this is always a big problem when you're going around and just seeing litter everywhere, and certainly the kind of disturbing scenes we saw a few weeks ago with the parks in Sheffield absolutely covered in litter when people have been around. It's a difficult one. I mean, on one hand, it's personal responsibility. People should be encouraged to take home their own litter, and there should be the provision there for them to be able to dispose of that. But again, I think it's higher than that. I think we've got to work with, I think as Jean said before, in terms of, you go down Tesco's and you see the plastic bottles in the plastic wrappers, again, that we've got to be working with industry more to do that. I mean, pay tribute to Greg and the Plastic Free Chesterfield for the work they've done locally in terms of trying to encourage more businesses to actually think wider, get more cafes and that are doing takeaways to use, like allow people to bring their own cups and all that. So I think there's a big role for the council there as a facilitator for that, to try to encourage to businesses for that. I mean, in terms of the highways and that, yeah, again, it's part of what the council's got to do in terms of maintaining that, is to make sure that they are cleaned up as possible, as much as possible. But I think it is more with that. I think it's trying to stop the waste at source rather than once it's been littered. And I think that is more working with businesses, etc., where we can to make sure that there isn't the waste there, and people are wanting water rather than going for a bottle, buying a plastic bottle, they'll take their own bottle with and that, and there's the facilities there to have that filled and things like that. I think that's the way to sort of help with that situation. Yeah.
Okay, lovely, thank you. And Paul Mann?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean, plastic water bottle. I mean, water companies don't make water, they make plastic bottles. That's all they do, and fill it up with water that's naturally flowing around, basically, to a degree. They don't make the water, they just make a plastic container. Regards littering, etc., on the side of the roads. Sunday I went on a litter pick in Ingersoll. 12 bags we picked up, full plastic bottles, certain fast food chains. Now, one thing that I have seen, I thought would be a good idea, if you drive through we'll use McDonald's for example, I'm not saying there's other chains out there as bad, so we say, as you drive through, the one thing every vehicle's got, that a police car, anyone the counter can trace, is a registration plate. So why isn't that printed on the bag or whatever the carton as it goes through? It can be done. It's not hard to do it. Our company do it who I work for their wagons, not so much for fast food, but these wagons they have. And if you find it at the side of the road, the council likely will be fly tipping, see the registration plate, they can quite easily log into it and send them a fine. They'll think twice when that drops on both. And that's the only way you're going to get anything sorted out regards waste. It's enforcement. Unfortunately, you can't have police officers or anyone or civil servants stood at the side of the road, but that's one example. You could work with businesses and say, just write the actual red plate on. I mean, I'm going to show my age here now. When I was a lad, you could take a bottle back and get a refund. Why aren't we doing that now? I mean, this recycling, etc., is not new to a degree. It's old. If you go back to the pot man and the milk man and things like that, I mean, it's not that long ago. If you went to the local pub, you bought a little big orange, you took the bottle back, you got 5p back. That might encourage a few more people. It also might encourage people to go out and collect the bottles and take them back anyway, for us, so to speak, just to get the reward. That's what I'd aim at. Fines, like I said, talk to the businesses, get them to put the registration plates on the fast food chains, because that's where most of the rubbish I picked up on Sunday came from. Cheers, Chair.
Lovely, thank you. Jean Innes.
Thank you. Yes, I heard that as well. I think it was a McDonald's employee who was yesterday. I heard that. I'd like to think it should work, but I can't see McDonald's letting the staff take that time. It'd be nice if they could, though. How would I stop plastic bottles? I'd just ban plastic bottles if I was Prime Minister, but I'm not going to be Prime Minister. I don't know what we can do. Education. Does it start when you're a child, you taught not to throw anything, never mind plastic bottles, you dispose of them in a proper manner? I'd like to see single-use plastic bottles not even be around. I remember it's not that long ago where all the coffee loungers, etc., were giving reusable cups or encouraging the use of reusable cups. That seems to have dropped by the wayside a little bit now, so perhaps it could do with a little nudge. Apart from educating people, telling people what harm it can do, it's same as everything else. What can we do? If we see someone and we find them, but it's having the staff to patrol the whole of Derbyshire or the whole of England to pick plastic bottles up, and we haven't got the resources, obviously. That isn't a cop-out. Obviously, there does need to be a way to be found. And when we're back in power at DCC, we'll sit down and discuss it, as I'm sure Chesterfield Borough Council already are doing with the Climate Change Action Group.
Thank you. Ed Fordham.
Thank you, Chair. We should have a bottle return scheme for glass bottles. We should have reusable cups. And we should be using companies that are overtly plastic free. We should be listening to Plastic Free Chesterfield. It's not complex, it's not difficult. People say they care about the market. The market has one of the very few plastic free companies, and I go down there with my glass containers and I reuse plastic containers and I get them refilled. The truth is that Chesterfield Borough Council, by example, had plastic cups, plastic spoons, plastic napkins, plastic, just the works, and they only removed them from visibility when we kicked up a fuss at Borough Council, I think it was 18 months ago. And Paul Mann and I were there voting to remove plastic waste, and our amendment was rejected by, I think, Councillor Jean Innes, amongst others. And instead we were told we were being cynical and opportunist. But the truth is they were just removed from view. If you go to certain cupboards in the town hall, you can still see them all stacked there waiting to be used. The fact is, we have to change our attitudes and our approach. Plastic-free companies are out there. Plastic-free Chesterfield, who are one of the co-hosts of this meeting, have a list of companies that are single-use plastic-free. If you use them, they will do better, and it will stop you needing to go to other shops and other supermarkets and buy plastic in the quantity that we all walk past and despise. The other fact is, I do believe that the Borough Council and the County Council should sit down with the managers of local supermarkets and explain the crisis. The litter picking that's going on across the borough is not led by DCC or CBC staff, it's led by volunteers who are outraged at the disrespect for our community and our environment. And the councils, in their views, have let them down. We may be giving out litter picking sticks, but that's not good enough. We have to tackle it at source, and that requires listening to the organisations like Plastic Free Chesterfield and others and taking action, not sitting here offering platitudes and pretending it's all a bit difficult. It's not. We have to just act.
Okay, thank you. And John Bolton, please.
Thank you. I can tell you something that the Derbyshire County Council acted on back in early 2018, and that was banning the usage of plastic coffee cups in County Council premises. And we opened the cupboard, which was full of rather dusty cups and mugs, and put them into usage. And every councillor had to ensure that that he washed his coffee cup up after use. So that was something quite positive. And when we return to county offices, we will continue to do that. I think, as Ed has mentioned, and Jean, education is paramount. I think schools have got to take responsibility for this and drum it into the kids that they don't litter parks and playing fields, and as has been going on in my area, Summersfield Park and Brookfield Fields. It's education, and education of older people as well. I think there's got to be some form of advertising locally to encourage the public to do the right things. Thank you.
Okay, lovely, thank you. So that leads us on to the final question. So the County Council has not currently declared a climate emergency, despite the district and borough councils having done so. And nationally, 126 local authorities have set a net zero target of 2030 for their whole district, borough or county. If elected, would candidates push the County Council to declare a climate emergency, as well as set a target date of no later than 2030 to reach net zero emissions for our whole county? If not, why not? Paul Mann.
Yeah, I've no problem in pushing that. I did on the borough. I've backed Ed with this as well. It's simple. Personally, I'd ask the question, put the motion forward, and I would personally ask for a recorded vote, and let's see who does and who doesn't. And then, okay, you might have to wait 4 years, but then the public can decide, in my personal opinion. But yes, I had no trouble doing it for the borough, and I have no trouble doing it for the county council as well. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, and Darren Yates.
Well, in a word, I want to say yes. I mean, I would say that it was in Bristol that the first climate emergency motion was passed, put forward by the Green Council, councillors on that council. Quite often, I mean, just to demonstrate the value of having a green in the room. That's what happens. Yeah, I think it's, I mean, they claim they passed some sort of climate emergency back in a few years ago, which was not really worth the name it came on. So yes, I think the very least we could do is declare full climate emergency, commit to being net zero by 2030.
Okay, lovely. John Bolton.
I think we did better than that. Quite a number of local authorities did declare climate emergencies back in 2018, and then no action was taken. However, in Derbyshire County Council, I was instrumental in being a member of the Scrutiny and Improvement Committee, and we set up a working party to start developing policies for climate change and carbon reduction, which culminated in the publication of a climate change and carbon reduction manifesto in December 2019. So we felt that that was more important than this gesture of declaring a climate emergency, and like other local authorities, just leaving it on one side. Didn't achieve anything, but we've got a plan, and that is incorporated into our manifesto for 2021, which can be viewed on the Derbyshire Conservative website. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Ed Fordham.
To be fair to John, he's partly right on that. The County Council has not declared a climate emergency, but on the 18th of May 2019, they issued their intention to write a climate change and carbon reduction plan, which they then brought out in December. But the truth is, it lacks teeth, it lacks firm targets, and it talks a lot of good intentions. But because of that debate on the 18th of May, we didn't bring forward the climate emergency in Chesterfield as early as we would have done, because the meetings were happening on the same day. I'd been elected, I think it was 3 days, when I spoke to Greg and others at the May Day march and said, I want to bring forward a climate emergency. And they said, oh, please don't do it at the May meeting, because we're hoping to declare one at the County Hall. The truth is, each council should declare a climate emergency. For Derbyshire County Council to not do so is playing politics, and they are playing a nuance that says we've got a better plan, when in fact they are tone deaf to the real concerns that many of the people on this call and this Zoom meeting have, that a climate emergency at least impels the officers to take seriously the concerns of those of us who are articulating for the biodiversity reductions to be reversed, for the carbon reductions to happen. So whilst he's right, they've got their own climate emergency plan, he let the cat out of the bag right at the end. It's on the Conservative Party site. It's not on the council site. It's not at the core of what the council officers are doing or what the county council regards as its métier focus. The truth is, we need local government as officers, as councillors, and as residents focused in the same direction, tackling a climate emergency, and there's no room for soft and warm words. Every council should declare a climate emergency and understand what that means today.
Okay, thank you. And Jean Innes, please.
Yes, if we get back in power, we will declare a climate emergency. It was under the Labour administration that the conversion of Derbyshire streetlights was changed to LED, saving energy and reducing carbon emissions, as well as saving money. Derbyshire Labour, the real climate action over the last 4 years, the Tories have refused to commit to meaningful climate change action. They failed to get government support for flood damage and local infrastructure, and they've been slow to divest pension investments. Labour will deliver more climate change programmes and promote Derbyshire as a natural hub for green investment.
Okay, thank you. So that actually brings us to the end of the questions. Now, I just want to check with Greg with regards to time, because there are 2 more questions that can be asked if we are on time. Greg?
Yeah, I mean, hopefully everyone can hear me. Yeah, I think there was a follow-up. Really, I don't know if any of the candidates know. It was a question that was asked about, do you support the CEE bill, which is the Climate and Ecological Emergency Bill that's currently stalled in Parliament at the minute. I don't know if anyone knows about it, or any of the candidates want to come in and say anything about it.
Ed?
I'm happy to come in and say I support it. Layla Moran, Member of Parliament for the Liberal Democrats, who leads on this, is supporting it. It's essential. It compels Parliament to act. It allocates money, and it gives powers down to challenge some of the crisis we've got. It would be madness not to support it, but as I think we all secretly know, it is unlikely to go through unless the big 2 parties do a deal, and that's unlikely in the current climate. So I fear we're going to have to struggle on locally with our own ambitions and hopes, but the CEE bill is essential, and I would support it all the way. Okay,
Jean, did you want to add something there?
I was going to say thank you for that, Ed, because I didn't know a lot about it, and thank you, and I will look into it. And if it's going to help climate change, I can't see why Derbyshire County Council wouldn't take it up, but I can't commit to that without speaking to the other members.
Okay, and Darren, Paul, John, anybody would like to comment on that?
Well, I'd like to have sight of the green paper before committing myself.
Yeah, I mean, any sort of legislation that improves and makes sure that commits and allocates the funding that's required in order to deal with the climate and emergency that we're in.
Okay, Paul.
Yeah, admittedly, I mean, we've no MPs. I'm an independent, small bunch of 9 councillors. Compared to the big parties, we don't get much of a say. But locally, as a few know, in Staveley, it's no overall control. Bozo was the similar. We could be the one vote that swings it either way locally, and I think Ed's right. We're going to start going locally, and anything that helps the environment at any level, whether it be the little bee bombs, that's some flowers into the multi-solar farm, etc., and higher, it's got to be good. So, but I say, well, I'm sat here like as a small fry of the 5, but I do think locally, as it stands at the moment, we could be the one group that could swing it either way, so the big parties don't get their own way, so to speak. Thank you.
Okay, so just quickly, there is one final question, and I'll just throw that in. So just sort of a quick sort of synopsis of what you do, really. So data provided to Friends of the Earth by aerial survey company Blue Sky International Limited total suggests tree cover in Chesterfield is 10 to 20%. How do you plan to support doubling tree cover in the area as part of efforts to transform the way we use our land and to help stop climate breakdown and help nature thrive? Darren, please.
Right. Well, I mean, I think there's a lot. I mean, in terms of whatever council-owned land that's not necessarily going to be used for anything else, I think then there's a lot can be done for there in terms of tree planting. I think there's a lot that could be worked with schools, etc., that have land available to them that can be used to increase tree coverage. And again, it's important as well in terms of this, it's to stress it's not just a case of planting trees, it's the right tree in the right place that's actually going to make a difference in terms of capturing carbon and in terms of the biodiversity. But I think it's a lot to do in terms of looking at what land the council either owns or has influence over and can actually then actively start planting more trees on its own land.
Okay, and Paul Mann, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think I said something earlier at the beginning in regards to trees, we are looking in as a small council now to plant trees. Now, the problem we have is we don't own much land because the bigger district and county councils do. But the problem we are having is getting the local the bigger councils to say, yes, you can do it. There seems to be a stumbling block at grassroots level to plant trees. We're screaming and shouting here. We've got companies that are wanting to pay for the trees, cover the cost. It's going to cost them nothing. All they've got to do is give them the land. One example, back at Staveley Hall, where I am, land we call the wilderness. We've tried twice to change it into a meadow, and now to plant trees. I am still 2 years on, waiting for a reply from Chesterfield Borough Council. It's as if it's a stumbling block and, oh, we don't know about this, don't know about that. The will is there at grassroots. It's getting people higher up, especially at DCC, who own vast amounts of land, to do the same and say, look, get on with it. It wouldn't cost them a penny if they spoke to grassroots like the parish and town councils that are working with local businesses to get these things sorted out. Cheers, Chair.
Okay, thank you. John Bolton.
Thank you. How about planting whole woods in commemoration of all the victims of COVID-19 that have passed away in Chesterfield? Or how about planting a copse in commemoration of Captain Sir Tom Moore? These are ideas I'm throwing forward. I think we've got to be imaginative, and that sort of thing would have a lot of public support. Thank you.
Thank you. Jean?
Yes, speaking as Derbyshire County Councillor, as we said, we've already committed to planting 1 million trees, which I think is Tory's policy as well if they get back in. But I haven't come here as a Chesterfield Borough Councillor, but I will say in Chesterfield, we are planting trees in our parks and play areas, because we know that we've got to commit to the future. We've got to. It's not about us sat around here. It's about our grandchildren and their grandchildren. We've got to be looking to the future generations. We owe it to them.
Okay, thank you. And Ed?
Look, let's get down to the hard facts. The Chesterfield Borough Council tree cover is about 10%. The national average is about 13%. And yet we have 2 massive country parks in Paulsbrook and Homebrook Valley. So the truth is, with the bonus of 2 country parks, we are behind. That is shameful. The Friends of the Earth recommendation is 18%. So we've got to virtually double our tree cover. Jean says we are planting trees as Chesterfield Borough Council. The climate change plan, I proposed that there should be 80,000 every 4 years. It was reduced to 1,000. We are breaking that target by planting 3,000 this year. Whoopee-doo. We have to go from 10 to 18% and quick. And we have the space, we have the time. I've got a question down at the next full council in my name. How many of the trees that we are planting are fruit trees? We could do it innovatively by having mini orchards. We could do it innovatively by having trees planted by communities and by children. The truth is we're not, and it's embarrassing, frankly. We can do so much more. And if I'm elected as a county council, and I'm pretty sure I speak for my other colleagues, we will partly use our council allowances and money available to us to enforce the planting of trees, not to set a target, but to lead on it. And that's our role as county councils, to lead, to advocate and to champion. The planting of trees is not an optional extra. It's a necessity and it's essential. And we have the space and we're failing at the moment.
Okay, that's great. So that is the end of all the questions now.
Tom, can I add? We talked earlier a lot about transport, and there was a lot of kind of discussion about buses, but we haven't heard a lot more about walking or like encouraging walking or cycling routes in Chesterfield. And I just wonder whether we could just quickly touch on that, on the issues of kind of trying to increase more walking and cycling routes in Derbyshire and Chesterfield, if that's possible.
Sure. Would like to? Anybody like to?
Yes, I'll speak.
Sure, John. Yeah.
Yes, the county council is planning an east-west cycle route in Chesterfield. It's going to run from Crow Lane through the town and onto the Hippo Valley Greenway, past Walton Dam and up to Somerset Park. There is a plan afoot to extend it up Linden Avenue and Chatsworth Road, but that is not going down very well with the households in that area, unfortunately. Personally, I'd prefer to see it going across the fields from Somerset Park to Greengate Avenue in Holymoor side. I think that would be an absolutely brilliant route. So yes, there are schemes afoot in Derbyshire as a result of quite a generous grant from central government. £1.6 million has actually been allocated to Derbyshire for these cycle routes in built up areas. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Paul Mann, did you want to add something there?
Yeah, cycle routes and walking routes is something we have been looking at. If I was on DCC, I'd push it even more. I think it's important. Chesterfield Canal, with the Stevie Towns board deal, I've got a cycle to work scheme in. We was looking into, there's several cafes, for example, along the canal where we're hoping to put bikes where you could hire and cycle from one, leave the bike. If you got a bike at Staveley, you could leave it at the Chesterfield end and vice versa, whatever. So I think there's a lot more you can do. You've also got to have separate routes because cyclists and pedestrians don't tend to mix pretty too well because one's going faster than the other. So I would stress there's a whole canal there in Chesterfield from one end to the other that could be really extended for this cycle route. If you think about it, really, if you got a cycle at Staveley, you could go shopping at Chesterfield and go on a bike. You might want to get a bus back with the bags you've got, but at least you've gone one way green. And if the bus is a lot more greener coming back, you've killed two birds in one stone. Either way, you've not got a car on the road, have you?
Jean, did you want to say something?
No, just I think the past year, the only good that has come out of it, as more people have been walking, more people have been cycling, not only for exercise, but also because they don't want to be in the confines of a car with another person or even with themselves. And in Chesterfield, we do have a lot of parks we can walk in. We have a lot of organised walks at the council range. We have organised walks for children during the school holidays. And we've got quite a lot of cycle stroke walking routes. If you want to walk into town, you don't need to walk along the roadside. There's plenty of walking paths. One thing that I've got to say, it really, really annoys me, is when we have cycle lanes on the road and nobody can get on them for parked cars. I don't know if we can do anything about stopping people parking on cycle lanes, but I don't know.
Okay, Darren, Ed, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, as you said, I mean, I've actually taken up cycling again as part of during the pandemic. So I sort of bought a bike and have been out on it sort of most days. And I think, as Jean says, a cycle lane has got to be more than some paint on a road. The number of times you try and ride up a cycle lane and just having to go out into the road because the cars are parked there, well, that's part of traffic enforcement. If we got the enforcement officers going around to do that, start fining the cars for being parked on the cycle lanes, then they'd stop doing that. So, but yeah, we've got to think a lot more imaginatively about transport as a whole and how we encourage active travel in terms of walking and cycling, making sure there are specific routes for both and they can be done safely. I think that there's a lot of work for the council to do there.
Okay, and Ed, is there anything you want to add?
Oh, just to say, I think cycling and walking is one of the things where it's not about the county council and district council doing things. It's about doing things with us instead of doing things to us. We have to develop routes together. I cycle quite often. I have to chain my bike to a tree or to a lamppost because there aren't cycle facilities available. We have the fast where if you park your bike down at the coach station, you have to go to the visitor information centre to get a key in order to get back in order to chain lock your bike up in an enclosed cycle route. The truth is we don't have an infrastructure in place that makes it welcoming for cyclists. we don't have luggage facilities that makes it welcoming for pedestrians, and we could. In this age of click and collect, cycling is all the more important, and we have to make it cycle friendly. But that means sitting down and working with us, not just, as John's administration sadly does, announcing a scheme that we all have to consult on, accept or reject. There has to be a dialogue about how we make our town cycle and pedestrian friendly. And at the moment, it's being done to us and not with us, and I regret that.
Great. Lovely, that's great. So I think, Greg, are we all right for time now if we go to closing remarks?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Right, okay, so this is basically your closing remarks from candidates, and essentially you've got 90 seconds each, really. So if we start with Jean Innes.
You probably have a couple of, you probably have more time now. You probably got a couple of minutes.
All right, okay.
So, yeah, it should be okay.
Once again, I'd like to thank you for inviting me to this. I've enjoyed the debate, and I've got to agree that we're all in one place. It's just how we deliver it. It was Derbyshire Labour Group that moved a climate emergency motion in council in May 2019, and it was Derbyshire Conservatives who tore the heart out of it in favour of a climate manifesto, which was meaningless and lacked commitment. Labour are committed to put action back into climate action, and we have a track record of doing exactly that in the past. All Labour councillors across the county are committed to these pledges, which are the expand clean air initiatives, expand electric charging network, improve carbon capture by restoring moorlands, heathlands, wetlands, improving biodiversity, support the 20's Plenty campaign to improve road safety and improve air quality. And all these pledges we've been made and we will all stick to, and they've been looked at by the officers of the County Council as being feasible, deliverable and financially affordable. On behalf of all the Chesterfield County Councillors, I ask for your support, and in return we all commit to work with climate action groups to collaborate on further activities that benefit the communities we represent and we all live in.
Okay, thank you. John Bolton, please.
Thank you. In summary, the Conservative-led County Council has, since 2017, demonstrated the necessary commitment and the ability to address the threats arising from climate change. Please visit the Derbyshire Conservative website and click on our manifesto for 2021. There you will be able to see in detail our realistically costed proposals for the next 4 years. Would you also bear in mind that it has been the Conservative-led council that has survived well the financial setbacks arising from the COVID pandemic in Derbyshire, whilst providing a good service to the public. Please vote Conservative on May the 6th or before if you have a postal vote, and for John Boult if you live in Walton and West Division. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you. Darren Yates, please.
Yeah, thank you for the invite and the chance to debate tonight. Other parties often talk about what they'll do or what they are doing to take action on the environment, but when you look in detail, it's often nothing more than greenwash. Our carbon emissions are still increasing as a nation, though quite often we've exported those over to other countries. The government's committed to a £27 billion road building programme and airport expansion, proposals for a new coal mine supported by councillors from both main parties. And as we discussed earlier, we've just seen the collapse of the programme supposedly designed to help homes across the country become more energy efficient. All in this year, we are due to host COP26. I think this is what tells us is we can't carry on doing the same thing or expecting the same old parties to actually deliver the change we actually need in order to move forward on the climate emergency. As I said before, electing a Green into the room can make a difference, as we've seen in Bristol, as we've seen in Brighton, as in terms of Caroline Lucas, the work she's done in Parliament. We don't whip our representatives. They can actually genuinely support and represent the local authority or the local people. So I would ask that you actually make a change, and actually if you want Green, vote Green. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Paul Mann.
Thank you, Chair. Basically, what I've heard so far is the Conservatives will do that, vote for us. The Labour Party will do that, vote for us. Even the Greens said, vote for us if you want green. Unfortunately, I've not heard head so far, so I can't comment on head. But climate change is not a political point grabbing situation. There's 5 of us sat here. Why don't we just talk together on it? Work together on it. Yes, if I get to county council, I will be hopefully a thorn in all the big parties' side, screaming and shouting. I may not have a massive influence, but I'm going to make sure that I'm heard. But not shout that Paul Mann, the community independent, has done this. It should be Derbyshire County Council. All of us together have done this. And when you get to that stage, then we will achieve something. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, lovely. And finally, Ed.
I'd like clearly as many people as possible to vote Liberal Democrat, but not just for the sake of it. We put forward the motion on disinvestment from plastic fuels. We support cycling, less use of single-use plastic, cutting down on glass use, fossil fuels, tackling carbon emissions. Fundamentally, it's tackling carbon emissions. I hear what Jean and John have to say, but I'm not convinced by the actions thus far. We need a step change. And Paul is right that we need to all work together on this. And the truth is that the tenor and the tone of the debates, certainly in Chesterfield, and I suspect in Matlock, is our side is right and your side is therefore probably wrong. We can all work much better together on this. I'd like to see the Climate Alliance at the middle of the table, leading the debates on this. The other factor is that science will change and science will move ahead of us. And our debate on plastic and glass will be overtaken, and we need to be up there and ready. The Liberal Democrats will be champions for change. We won't be closed to what's new, but we will act on the science. And more than anything else, if we think there's a problem, we won't be afraid to speak up. We will advocate for tackling climate change at every single stage. And thank you for hosting this, Tom.
You're welcome. Thank you. So that brings us to a close now. So thank you everyone for attending. So Greg just wants to add a few things before we do close. He wants to talk about the Derbyshire Climate Pledge. Is that right, Greg?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So thanks. Yeah, thanks Tom for chairing, and thanks a lot to all the candidates for joining, and thanks to everyone who's been able to join us, which is it's really great to see, and lots of people talking about this issue, which you know, we at Chesterfield Climate Alliance and Derbyshire Climate Coalition, we feel the climate should be at the heart of the election. And that's kind of and that's why Chesterfield Climate Alliance is part of the Derbyshire Climate Coalition, and the Derbyshire Climate Coalition it represents around over 30 community and faith groups across Derbyshire, campaigning for action to address the climate and ecological crisis. The Derbyshire Climate Coalition are a non-political group, and so basically we're contacting all the candidates standing in the election from all the parties, so to kind of make sure that they put the climate at the heart of the election. And what we're asking all the candidates to sign a pledge, and that pledge is as follows. It says, if elected, I pledge to ensure that our council works with the community to rapidly implement a climate action plan which strives to drastically cut carbon emissions by 2030, and that the climate and ecological emergency is a central consideration in all council actions. So we're currently contacting all the candidates, and we're asking candidates to sign the pledge. Please, if you do feel strongly about this issue, we do really strongly ask all the candidates to sign this pledge, and Derbyshire Climate Coalition will be following up on this as well. So if candidates are elected as a councillor, we will be following up to ensure that the candidates and then the councillors then hold their word to the pledge that they've signed. It's really important because the local government has a really key role to play in taking action. In their report to government in December 2020 concerning the role of local authorities in tackling climate change, the Committee on Climate Change, which is made up of independent scientific advisors, said that local authorities have such an important leadership role to play in partnership with businesses and the public. And so councils have influence over 1/3 of emissions in their area, and so it's so important that the Derbyshire County Council puts the climate emergency at the heart of all council actions and all decisions that they take. And so so basically, if you're watching this and you're able to, we will send you a link, and you will then be able to contact your candidates. You can put your postcode in, and you can contact your local candidates asking them to sign this pledge. And we will be publishing all the people who sign the pledge, and we will also be publishing all the people who don't sign the pledge as well. So we're non-party political. We're we're completely, we just want to highlight what's kind of going on really, and we kind of thought this is such a really important issue. So that's kind of it really for the Derbyshire Climate Coalition. And obviously we're the Chesterfield Climate Alliance has hosted this event tonight, and we're kind of a similar we're a smaller body like the Derbyshire Climate Coalition. So we're a coalition of smaller Chesterfield based organisations and groups who are working to tackle and put climate change at the heart of Chesterfield, and ensure that we can really act on Chesterfield's climate emergency declaration and climate action plan. So we'd love everyone to get involved in Chesterfield Climate Alliance as a way, you don't have to be part of a group, you can just be an individual, and you can get involved in Chesterfield Climate Alliance as an individual. And you can help ensure that we can run projects, and we can ensure that we can run projects like tree planting, we can run our own projects like, looking at how we can generate energy, or looking at how do we tackle our transport. This is, as a lot of the candidates said, it comes down to individual use as well, and obviously the community, we as the community, we can do something collectively as well, and that's why Chesterfield Climate Alliance has come to form really. It's because the community, we can act as a community to really take action ourselves on this issue. So we'd love for anyone to get involved in Chesterfield Climate Alliance. We hold our meetings on the first Tuesday of every month. So our next meeting is on the Tuesday, the 4th of May at 7 p.m. And everyone's welcome to find out more about us on Facebook on Chesterfield Climate Alliance. We put all our meetings on our Facebook page. And we'll also have a very strong presence at the upcoming May Day march in Chesterfield. So please come along to the Chesterfield May Day march on Monday the 3rd of May. I believe it's something like 11:30 at the town hall, and we want to build, and we'll be having a strong environment and climate presence at that. So we hope to join you there. Come and bring your banners and join us as part of all the Chesterfield Climate Alliance. That'd be really great to see you.
And Greg, am I right in thinking that anybody watching, and if they want to sort of delve a bit further into any of the questions, or if they've got any of their own questions, they can submit it on here or via the Chesterfield Climate Alliance Facebook group?
Yeah, that's right. So if anyone has any additional questions, if you contact Chesterfield Climate Alliance, and we can write any questions that you have. Obviously, we've not been able to ask all the questions tonight. So if anyone, and we did have a lot of questions that were submitted, and we do thank everyone who submitted a question for this. We just didn't have the time to get through everything. But obviously, if you do have a question, and make sure if you do have a question, keep it relevant to what the county council can really have control over. Sometimes if you have a question about what individuals can do, it's more about kind of what the county council can really have control over and do, which is issues around transport and waste and energy and housing and buildings and infrastructure and biodiversity and land use. So those are the kind of key issues that the county council have control over. So yeah, so that's, I would love, if you do have any other questions, then send them through.
Great. So I think that pretty much sums everything up. So from my part, I just want to say again, thank you to Darren, Paul, John, Jean and Ed, especially for rescheduling a week later. Thank you, Greg, for bringing this all together and finally getting it happening. So I'd just like to wish all the candidates very good luck in the upcoming election, and thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks to say it's been a very well run session.
Thanks a lot, Chair. Cheers.
Very much.
You're welcome.
A big thank you to Tom for chairing it, and a big thank you to Greg for the organisation. Very good. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Take care, guys.
Thanks a lot. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Well, bye-bye.